Buongiorno, good morning, benvenuti alla seconda giornata di BTO. Partiamo con un panel molto alberghiero, molto tecnico sulle varie tipologie e i vari modelli di business. Il keynote, sono lieto di introdurre Brian McCabe, Chief Executive of JDB Hotels. Brian.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. This morning's going to be in English, and being an Englishman living in New York, I learned to speak slowly so that the Americans could understand me. So I promised to do my best this morning to go and be exactly the same. Just before I start, how many hoteliers are in the audience? Thank you. How many of you are part of a chain, a soft brand, a franchise? And how many of you go alone? Wonderful. Out there today, there's a world of possibilities. There are chains that want to be part of the independent boutique hotels, franchises, soft brands, a word we didn't really know 5 years ago, representation companies, and all of that still allows you, if you will, to go alone and be independent. The thoughts this morning, as Giancarlo talked and set the stage for this, is why. How. How do you choose a partner? And it is a partnership. When you are working and looking after your independent hotel, how you select your partner and what you want is a very important part of your business. It's your market, and it's your business and your customers that you want to attract. How do you select that partner who becomes your eyes, your ears, your voice outside of your local area? So just before we do that, I just want to go through just on a few topics of what we do. Just a very brief introduction, a little history. We'd like to define the challenge, discuss our options, talk about identify what are the results that are possible, who our customers are, and finally, what does value and success look like? So if I may, just before we start, my company has been involved and engaged in representing hotels in Italy for over 35 years. We're a very small boutique company based in New York with a staff of 20 people. We represent 80 hotels here in Italy. We're engaged in a business-to-business model, i.e. we sell to travel agents who sell to their guests. We pride ourselves on those relationships with our hotels and with our agency customers, and through them, your customers. We connect all of that using technology, using a reservation network, using all the modern parts of CRM that people use today to engage with customers. I would suggest that Italy has never been alone in terms of global travel. In the 5th century, when Rome was developing Christianity, or became the center of Christianity, religious pilgrimages were taking place from around Europe who were coming to Rome. That migration of tourism continued. In the 16th century, the great cities of Genoa, of Pisa, of Venice were attracting business customers. They arrived by boat. They needed accommodation. They needed trading partners. The 18th century saw the grand tours develop. The aristocrats of Europe who wanted to learn more, who wanted to understand travel, they were coming to Italy. That created many of the city center hotels. In the 19th century, the railways arrived, and God forbid we opened it up to the middle class. And those people wanted to go to beaches, wanted to go to places where they could go and enjoy hospitality. Many of you will know, and as a foreigner here, Dolce Vita in the 1960s, which talked about the good life in Italy. That boosted tourism even more. And following that, the explosion of skiing. So we now had the port cities, the key cities, the beach areas, the mountain areas, all being developed into hotels and hospitality. In the 70s and 80s, tourism exploded. Global travel took place, and for the first time, Italy saw competition People didn't need to just come here from Europe. The world was their oyster in terms of travel. So now we had over 1,500 years the development of product and of competition that was taking place. In today's market, 50 million people arrive a year coming to Italy spending $200 billion of money that they spend in hospitality, tourism, and food and drink. When you look at that 50 million and you look at the people that are coming, in the top 10 now, you have China, you have Brazil, you have Russia, you have Australia. Yes, of course, you've got Europe, but that has a blend of people that we all know as well. And then, of course, you've got the United States. So we live in a global world. Italy has always been in a global world. It's just continuing, and it's growing at a faster pace. So what is our challenge today as we go forward? How do you break through the noise, the clutter that exists in today's marketplace? We are bombarded every day with emails soliciting a product. I was listening to Glenn Fogel yesterday from Priceline talking about how many inquiries he got in a given week for people with a business proposition for him. Your job is to own, build, and develop your own hotels. But you're bombarded every day with the newest technology. How will it work? What will it look like? And by the way, it costs you some money. So how do we, in today's age, engage in that global marketplace? Are you aware of all the forms of distribution that do exist today? It's almost bewildering. The cost of distribution. Going back 20 years ago, we all understood distribution was paying an agency 10% and you built a market. Today, distribution probably costs 30% and above because you've got so many areas of technology in there. And how do you get value for that? Competition comes from multiple sources. And how do we control all of those costs so that if you, like me as a small company, think about every day of how do we grow our business, what does it look like, and when will that day happen when we ever make a profit? Those would be nice times. The piece for that has always struck me as words that I think that apply to our industry is we need to act locally, but we need to think globally. We need to understand what is our point of difference. We need to be laser focused on our customer and service. Those are key today. Our customers today aren't just driven by collecting trophies. They don't just want anymore to say, I went to Florence, I went to Rome, I went to Venice. They want to come here and they want to have an experience. That's the key market in our customer that we want to work with today. It's just different, but change is accelerating extremely fast. So now to come back to the topic and say, well, what are our options today? What do those look like? How do I make those choices? Today, we've seen the chains, the large ones, the Hiltons, the Marriotts, etc., wanting to be engaged in the small boutique hotel market. They think there's value there. They think there's value. Just recently, Starwood acquired a small brand in Germany, and they didn't buy it because of the hotels or technology. They bought it because they wanted another product to give to their SPG group, i.e. their frequent travelers. And they saw that as a way of doing it. So Hilton have created Curio, Marriott created Autograph, Intercontinental created Alliance, Choice created Ascend. All of those are there. But my contention is that actually your product becomes their product, your hotel becomes their product, and the fees become part of them and part of them as a customer. And for the smaller boutique hotel, it may be a very expensive way with no easy exit strategy if you get it wrong. In the franchise market, I have two colleagues here today from Accor and from Best Western who know far more about that market than I do. But they provide excellent access to marketing, to sales, along with global reservations. Again, with small properties, I would suggest you ensure that you look at those as very valuable opportunities. But understand again, how do you measure the length of the contract and how are you negotiating what success looks like on a local and on a global basis. Soft brands, they've been in the market for years. Relais Chateau celebrated their 60th birthday this year. And in today's jargon, Relais Chateau's a soft brand. Leading hotels, been around very similar, actually have been around longer than them. The preferred hotels. Interestingly, preferred have just announced they're going to subdivide with 5 additional brands. So what was a really well-known household name is now going to become a derivative with 5 different brands. And I would argue with some of those, these companies had very successfully built almost the household seal of approval, that if you bought through leading or small or preferred and it was a sticker on your window, people understood that and respected it. Representation, which is kind of that 4th area to have a look at, in many cases, I would almost argue, are soft brands. JDB, as an example, has been in Italy more than 35 years. We have 80 hotels in our collection. We have our own niche online distribution and reservation service, and we pride ourselves, as I said, on personal relationships. There's many companies like this who offer varying degrees of service, but without necessarily that fixed long-term contract that may be of value to you. So how do we define what is a soft brand? Well, from an external point of view, we look at it and say it's a collection offering services such as representation, marketing, sales, reservation, while allowing hotels to maintain their own independence. From a hotelier point of view, changes around. I can maintain my independence and point of difference and yet have access to global marketplaces, distribution systems, and at the same time be nimble about finding new markets and new revenue opportunities. So the engagement still is long-term in its thought process. It's decided locally, but it needs to be enacted globally. And I think that if you look at a very subtle difference between how externally we think of soft brands and yet the value that hoteliers tell me they want out of, I won't call it a soft brand, but that collection, that becomes a key part of what they do. So how do any of these provide value for you in today's market? The difference, as we've talked about, between the leading hotels, 80 years old, Relais Chateau, 60 years old, preferred. They've moved a little bit further forward into the reward and loyalty program. And I would suggest that that's a consideration for smaller hotels today, is where is the value of that? But the results that I believe that you're looking for is, number one, is global connectivity, its exposure, its introductions, its representation, its marketing. At the same time, it is the understanding and knowledge of who your customer is, which is absolutely what sets the small boutique hotel apart from the larger big boxes that exist. At the same time, there are, how do you achieve a lower fixed cost? So as you're looking at these systems and you're looking at how it fits into your distribution, not only is it about increased revenue, it's decreasing cost. And that's an important part for any small business today. So we want to be able to engage with a partner, in my opinion, that while you understand what they do and that they have fixed costs, there is also a risk and reward. So the more you do, the more you provide, the higher the reward is. And that, I think, is a key part of that. I would always argue that soft brands are closer to the customer. On a day-to-day basis, that soft brand knows who the target audience is, they know who the customer is, and I would suggest that that soft brand shares that customer always with you. And I believe that that does happen, that you, the hotelier, for a soft brand to give the best value to their customer, whether that's an agent or an agent's customer or the customer direct, you need to know who that customer is. So the benefit always needs to be knowledge of who your customer is. So how do we align the value for this? How do you choose the right partner? I would suggest the number one part is take a business partner who has the same business values that you do. That what you want to do out of your business is what they want to do. You need to understand each other's strengths and weaknesses. You know, in certain of these companies, they have tremendous strengths. They have strengths locally, but maybe not internationally. They maybe don't have strengths globally, but only in unique markets. You may need and have a very highly competitive situation. So I would always argue that the choice you make is very much about and understanding your strengths and weaknesses and their strengths and weaknesses. You really do need to know what it costs. Understanding that is a key part, as in any equation. You need to understand the likely rewards. And the way to do that always is the way that you run your business on a day-to-day basis. Look at it within a budget line of what it's going to cost, what the potential income is, and where you see the intangible value of those companies. Going back to what I said before, in many cases, it's about the introduction, it's about the product knowledge, it's about what that company can give you that lets you do your job faster. Global doesn't always just mean big. Every market is regional, is reachable. We heard again Glenn talk about yesterday of how their strength has grown in China, a market that is now in the top 10 of arrivals into Italy. How do we get to that market? Are there experts in that market? Or is the OTA the best route for you? Again, it's you making that choice and understanding your business that helps you look at where you want to go. So I think when I look at that, it's truly about what works for you. What works for you, your individual product, where it's located, what your competitive environment is. But I do have, of course, a few caveats to go with that. I believe that chains many times have greater distribution than independent soft brands. But I equally would always argue that I believe that your inventory is their inventory. Your hotel is their hotel. Their reservations going through their system are their reservations, not necessarily your reservations. And when you're a company of that size, it's what are they doing to report that income to their shareholders, not necessarily at a local level of business relations. And I've worked for Hilton and I've worked for Millennium, so it's not a part about being with them, but I just believe that in the independent market is the way that it is. Independent soft brands are more nimble. They have an ability to work with you. They sometimes provide less distribution channels than you may ultimately think you want or actually want. But they're more engaged at a local level with the hotel, with the customer. And in the end, as I said to you earlier, as in the case in Germany and Starwood, they become valuable to the larger brand because they see the smaller soft brands as being valuable to them. At the end of the day, this industry is about you. Whether you franchise, whether you soft brand, it's your hotel. There is nothing that's an easy solution that says, hey, I've got this, it'll all be okay, I don't need to do anything further. This is a way in which we can just look at this and be able to support you doing your job easier. So, what do you need? You need to make sure that your product remains unique. You need to know who your customer is, what they're looking for, and what's the best way to go and get them. And importantly, sometimes in there we forget that we're in an industry that's about people. And mostly it's about fun. You know, I came back today or yesterday back into Florence. This is my 4th trip here this year. You know, coming back and seeing friends and meeting people in the hotel industry, I see a new hotel, I see new bedrooms, I meet new people. That is what our industry is about, and that's what I believe the soft brands bring. Read and learn everything that you can about what you want, understanding how you will get to the decision about the right solution for you. Most of all, and in conclusion, life is always going to change. What you believe today is not what you're going to believe tomorrow. and what the products are today is only a stepping stone to where they're going to go tomorrow. So life is always going to change. The one thing I would do suggest, going solo in today's age, unless you have the most unique location, the most unique product, solo really is not an option. So as you will gather by what I'm saying, I believe that looking at soft brands, and I don't think there's a hard definition of those, from working with the franchise companies to the representation companies, is the way to go. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Brian. If you'd like to take a seat here. And now, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to introduce our talkbackers. From Best Western, please welcome Giovanna Manzi. And from Accor Hotels, Mr. Renzo Iorio.
Hi, Brian. Hi, everyone. Good morning. You are so sleepy today.
I'm sorry, I put them all to sleep.
You did your best.
I tried.
So, Brian, thank you for your introduction. I think your point is very good. I think all of us can agree about the soft brand. Even if soft, it's an adjective that I would like to use only to describe myself, but not to combine to a brand.
Yes.
Because I think in Italy we still need brand compared to soft brand, to be honest. I think the situation in Italy is with a very low penetration of hotel chain. In terms of brand hotel chain, is very peculiar and makes our market very different compared to other, especially to United States. It is very familiar to me. So for me, brands are still important in this market particularly. I think because the brand is the only element that can shorten the moment of customer choice. In other words, when you are looking for an hotel in the OTA, Booking, Expedia, whatever you use, you need to spend a lot of time to decide in which independent hotel you have to go. You have to read a lot of reviews. You have to go through all the elements, all the standards, all the features the hotel has, while the brand can make for you the synthesis. If you look at a Best Western hotel, you know exactly what you are expecting for. If you look at an Accor hotel, Mercure, or Sofitel, for instance, you know exactly what is the offer. So the brand is the only element that can make this synthesis for you. And this happens in all the daily choices you are making. Think about the coffee of this morning coffee. Your choice is made via a brand. Probably you have a specific brand you drink. And until the end of the day, when you drink your last spirit, at the end of the day, you choose a brand, even for the spirit. And this is the same for hotel. So my question is, sorry for this long assumption. My question to you is, Brian, which is the value of having a soft brand? Let's define standalone soft brand, as JDB is, without the umbrella of brands. So for instance, even Accor or Best Western has in their offer the soft brand, but it's under an umbrella of brands. For you, it's a standalone offer. To me, it's a little bit difficult to understand which is the value of having a standalone soft brand. So this is my question for you.
Thank you. So I think that there's a couple of points that I'd like to touch on as you talk about. I very much agree that the brands are important. I think that sometimes brands almost confuse. I know the name Accor, but if I'm thinking about all the way down the food chain, whether you're from Pullman, from Mercure, from Ibis, you've got a series of brands. And my original contention is that in today's age, the newer, younger traveler that is looking for an experience isn't looking in the same way for a brand that travelers used to look for a brand. Secondly, I think that brands have a different perception, as you said, in different parts of the world. So Best Western is thought of differently in America to how it's thought of in Europe, to how it's thought of in Italy within Europe. So when you talk about that, not only has a brand got to look at their value inside the country, it's got to look at what it is on a global basis. And I use Accor and the change in senior management over the last year that's revolutionized of how Accor thinks with the acquisition of really large chains is, again, a contention that says that's shareholder-driven, and as much as you on the local basis have amazing input, amazing relationships, how do you transpose that to the same people in France or in the States? So for a soft brand, which again, long-winded way, we're good at this, I've been in Italy too long, is that for a soft brand, I use the word that we are niche. Our market is North America. I don't pretend to be able to do what a brand can do in terms of that global reservations, nor do I pretend that I can be across Europe, but my level of expertise is in North America. And if you look at the audience of hotels in Italy, and let's just take that across the board, that about 40% of their business comes from North America, my recognition is that that is a really important market for them, and that's the market that I see us doing. But I don't pretend that as a representation company, and I am a sales and marketing company, as I think we all are, but within there, I have a very niche in a singular market, and my goal is to be the expert in that market and to provide value to the hotels.
Well, of course, I work for Accor and I'm in love with my company.
Sure.
So it's clear that I have a point of view which it could not be neutral. But I think that the main point that we have to think about, and I mentioned we all, branded or unbranded, soft branded or hard branded, if the expression can work, is where do we stand, in which point of the downhill of becoming commodity producer? Which is, I think, it's a very relevant point, and I do agree, in Italy, in a sense that Italy is, as you mentioned, is so desired to be visited from all along the world, but we have a peculiar number of hotels, we have 33,000 hotels, 115,000 looks like hotel properties, and we have some 3.5 million of flat houses that can be rented on the market. So the point, and I think that we all are mainly hotelier, first of being customer and travelers, is how we can avoid to become a commodities. Because I do think that today the main issue that we have in our industries is that there's a significant trust that is positioned between us and the market. So I would say that an authority should look much more to the capability of accessing the market of the producer rather than the capability of the consumer to access to the offer. In this point, I think that for sure a brand is something that, or an aggregation or something that allows us to be efficient is something which is needed. On the opposite, I do agree that there's no more time of one size fits all. So the consideration you are making that are also looking at a market like US, in which 70% of the hotels are branded somehow, is already another step and another area in which, like in Accor, we started with standard brands. So the hardware of the things should be always like that. And we moved on non-standardized brand, always in the aim of creating value for the hoteliers. So in this sense, when you see that when the soft brands are closer to the guest, I would ask you, are you thinking that are also closer to the hotels, to the hotel as businessman, as industry?
Right. So interesting question, and certainly one which I can only speak for. As I say, we're in early December. This is my 4th trip here this year, working with our group of hotels, knowing them, understanding them. All of them have also traveled to the States, so I talked about the pieces before of introductions to the market, engagement with them, where you spend a week with these people to be able to help them understand the marketplace that they've determined is part of their business plan. I think the caveat that I come at the very top of the hotels that I know and that I understand within Italy particularly, and your point is valid, Europe is 70% independent, America's 70% chain. But when Americans leave the US, their choice is 70% independent. Now, how do you get that spend? And I think the piece that I look at is always I look at that quality traveler who wants to stay in a 4- and 5-star hotel, wants a unique experience, and wants to come back not just, as I said, to collect a trophy that they've been to Venice or they've been to Florence. They want to come, they want to experience what's here. The brands which I will never disagree, have on a global distribution basis a way of helping all of these hotels. I genuinely believe that if I was to ask the audience, they are uniquely proud of their properties and they believe that they are unique. Their challenge is how to get that more profitable at lower cost without signing a long-term contract, but can they get the benefit short-term? And I would look at that and say, I think that today, because life changes, that representation, calling itself a soft brand, however it is, we're a collective. We are not on the GDS. We just connect through channel managers to the properties. So we don't have the capability and the technology that you have.
I have a question from the floor. Sorry, myself, to Renzo, because since yesterday we have talked a lot about the, let's say, the revolution which Bassene is doing in Ancora, and you are experiencing this revolution, so you can tell us more. What we have seen is 2 different ways of thinking into the big chains. There's the giant Marriott Starwood thing, and which is I want to become as big as possible to respond to the market and to compete with the OTAs. And the response that Ancora has done, yes, I want to be giant, but I do invest in many, many different things, from distribution to hostels to accommodation. Yesterday we had One Fine Stay on stage. So tell us more about this revolution from the inside.
But, well, it's completely a revolution. I think that there are 2 philosophies of approach. The Marriott Starwood approach is, I think, mainly an industry-driven strategy. So I became larger is something which is inside the company and to gain critical mass to be more efficient. Our revolution is mainly looking to the guest, to the travelers, and seeing what he's concretely doing. And if he starts to choose homes rather than hotels, I think that my value is to be stick to him, to create value to him. And so I prefer to enlarge my offer, including homes, including services. We just took over one of the major concierge business in Europe, John Paul. We, as you mentioned, done a small revolution with the marketplace, so opening our platform to completely independent hotel, non-branded hotel. So really trying to be fixed to the customer, because we do think that only being always relevant to a customer, we can create value to all the things that we are doing. And also, I think the major revolution that Sebastian made, and which I think is a pretty relevant one, concerning that we are a French company and he is French, is that it's better to buy innovation and include in a platform rather than to create our own renovation, which is the reason why we bought 25 hours. We bought Mama Shelter. Concretely, we bought and we enlarged our offer to being as non-standard and more linked to the guest as possible, because you are perfectly true that it's not so important the wardrobe that there is in a room, and especially if there is the 1,000 wardrobe that you see in the chain, but rather the main point is to have smart people, cool people in your lobby. And in that sense, it's better to have a lot of brands that are meaningful for the guests, because at the very end, of course, the value of a brand is what the customer decides, is not what the owner of the brand pretends the value is. So in that sense, I think that we are really making a revolution, which is a big bet, because of course the numbers will tell if we are right or not, but we are trying to do something which the industry is not doing.
Ladies and gentlemen, Giovanna Manzi, Renzo Iorio, and Brian McCabe, thank you all very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Brian.
Thank you. Pleasure to meet you.
Pleasure to meet you.